I didn't know a place could smell like rust and ammonia at the same time, but the entrance to Grayson Industrial Solutions was a punch to the face. Even before I stepped through the double doors, I could feel it in my sinuses, sharp, metallic, and chemical all at once, like something dead was being cleaned with bleach. The factory loomed in front of me, a grey slab of concrete and steel surrounded by chain-link fencing and floodlights that never turned off, even in daylight. They called it a second chance program. One of those government-partnered work placements that take people with gaps in their history and slap them into jobs nobody else wants. Minimum wage, no benefits, 12-hour night shifts, but guaranteed cash every Friday. It was that or eviction. So I said yes. The security booth buzzed open and the guard, a pale guy with eyes too wide for his face, waved me through without a word. He didn't even look at my ID, just motioned to the doors and pressed a button. The factory hissed as it opened. Inside was darker than I expected. Everything was illuminated by overhead sodium lights that bathed the floor in a jaundiced glow. Machines groaned in the distance, the rhythm like a dying heartbeat. Conveyor belts shifted in staccato. Jerks. I didn't see any people at first, just rows of cubicle-like workstations filled with strange equipment. Some kind of molding or packaging operation. Plastic parts. Maybe a woman stood near the entrance, dressed in an immaculate grey blazer, over a high-collared blouse. She had a clipboard in her left hand and wore gloves. Thin leather gloves. "Indoors, you're the new one," she said, not asking but stating, "Yeah. Jordan Price." She didn't shake my hand. "You're late. Orientation began at 9 o'clock. It's 8:56. She blinked. Orientation began at 9 o'clock. I decided not to argue. She turned and walked briskly through the maze of machinery, and I followed. "I am Supervisor Langley. You will report to me during all scheduled and unscheduled overtime periods. You are not to enter restricted sectors unless directed. You are not to speak to legacy staff without clearance. And you are not to deviate from the protocols. Ever." "Okay," I said. "Wait, what do you mean by legacy staff?" She didn't answer. Instead, we arrived at a grey door labelled Overtime Briefing Room in faded red letters. A paper sign was taped below, "Attention New Hires 1. Do not remove your badge. 2. Follow the protocol without variation. 3. Never clock out early, even if the shift ends." Langley pushed open the door and gestured for me to enter. Inside, the room was cold, like hospital cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 6 folding chairs sat in a semicircle. 3 were occupied. The people didn't turn to look at me when I came in. They sat stiffly, their hands folded on their laps, badges clipped to their collars. Langley nodded toward the chair at the end. "I Saturday." The metal was freezing beneath me. "Protocol orientation will begin," Langley said, stepping to a small podium. "Do not interrupt." No PowerPoint. No slide projector. Just Langley and her dry voice. "The Grayson factory maintains continuous operations. Shifts are assigned based on aptitude, availability, and willingness to comply with the overtime. Protocol. There are 9 primary protocols. Failure to follow any one of them may result in disciplinary action. Repeated infractions will result in reassignment." "What kind of reassignment?" I asked. One of the others turned their head slightly, just enough to glance at me, then looked away. Langley didn't acknowledge my question. She continued. "Protocol 1. All overtime employees must wear their issued identification badge at all times. If your badge becomes lost, you must report to Sub-Level 1 immediately. Do not seek assistance from surface-level staff. Protocol 2. You must clock in using the designated fingerprint scanner at the beginning of your shift. Do not use another employee's scanner, even if yours is malfunctioning. If your scanner malfunctions, wait beside it until a floor supervisor addresses you directly. Protocol 3. You are not to speak to the workers in Section Delta. If one speaks to you, do not respond. If one touches you, report to the infirmary. Do not attempt to wash the affected area until cleared by medical personnel. Protocol 4. The factory whistle will sound at midnight. If you hear it before or after midnight, do not acknowledge it. Remain still, eyes closed, until the sound passes. The real whistle sounds 3 times. No more. No less. I glanced at the others in the room. One woman, blonde hair tied too tightly, in a bun, was mouthing the words as Langley spoke. The man next to me looked like he hadn't slept in days. Sunken eyes, twitching jaw. The third was a woman with ink-stained fingers and what looked like burn scars peeking from under her sleeves. They'd heard this before. More than once. Protocol 5. If you encounter a man wearing a white safety vest and no identification badge, do not assist him. Do not speak to him. If he attempts to guide you anywhere, walk the opposite direction. Protocol 6. Breaks are scheduled at 2:33 a.m. precisely. You are to enter the break room, consume nothing, and leave when the lights flicker twice. If the lights do not flicker, remain seated and silent. You may resume your duties when the second flicker occurs. Protocol 7. Machines marked with red tape are in diagnostic mode. Do not touch, clean, or approach them. Do not look at them for more than 5 seconds. Protocol 8. If you find a piece of machinery that was not there at the beginning of your shift, do not report it. Avoid eye contact with any reflective surfaces nearby. These machines are not assigned to you. Protocol 9. When your shift ends, you will hear a bell. Not the whistle, a soft bell, like a wind chime. Follow the yellow arrows on the floor. If you reach the exit and it is not the same door you entered through, do not leave. Return to your station. The bell will chime again in exactly 1 hour. Langley. Close the folder. These protocols are not to be memorized. They are to be lived. Violations will be recorded. She turned to us. Any questions? I almost raised my hand. Almost, but then I looked at the other workers again. And I realized something. None of them had looked at Langley the whole time, not once. Report to Line C, she said. Supervisor Ortega will assign duties. Your time card has been activated. She walked out. The others stood. So did I. The factory seemed louder now, like the machines had woken up. Conveyor belts snapped into motion. Mechanical arms whirred and rotated. Line C was on the far side of the floor. I passed Line A and Line B, both silent, both roped off with hazard tape. Their equipment was covered in tarps, and strange black stains marked the floor near the drains. Did I reach Line C? Ortega was waiting, though he didn't look like a factory guy, more like a high school gym teacher. Muscular, with a beard too perfectly trimmed to be natural. He gave me a look like he already regretted meeting me. You the fresh meat, he said. Jordan. Yeah. Stick close. Don't touch anything unless I say. You see something weird. You keep walking. Got it. Got it. Badge on. I nodded. He glanced at it, then muttered, still clean. Good. We spent the first hour doing basic stuff. Packing sealed cartons. Moving plastic pallets. Every now and then Ortega would stop and stare off toward one of the darker corners of the factory, muttering to himself. You'll get used to it, he said at one point, catching me flinch when a machine hissed too close to my ear. Or you won't. Doesn't really matter. What's in the boxes? I asked. He gave me a look. Don't ask questions like that. Not unless you want them to start asking back. Before I could respond, a high-pitched tone rang through. The building. Not the whistle. Just a tone. Harmless. But Ortega froze. He grabbed my shoulder and shoved me behind a stack of boxes. Stay quiet, he hissed. A group of workers passed by. 6 of them, all wearing grey uniforms that didn't match ours. No gloves. No goggles. No noise-cancelling gear. And none of them blinked. Their eyes didn't move. They walked in sync, single file. Towards Section Delta. I didn't say a word after. They passed. Ortega let out a long breath. Legacy staff. Don't talk to them. Why are they still here? They were here before the shutdown. Before Grayson went private. Some say they never left. Just kept working. Others think there's something else. Something else. He shrugged. Long shifts can do weird things to people. Keep your head down, keep your badge visible, and you might last longer than the last guy. What happened to him? Ortega looked at the floor, then he pointed to one of the red-stained drains. Clean-up crew came around 4 a.m. told us it was just coolant. But coolant doesn't leave teeth behind. I didn't sleep that day. Not even when I got home. My badge sat on the nightstand. Facing the door, I left the hallway light on, and around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new message. From an unlisted number, just one line. Tonight's your first real overtime. Make sure you remember the protocols. I don't know how long I stood there in the locker room, frozen, hand still trembling from the note that had seemingly written itself. Do not violate the overtime protocol. It stared back at me from the paper like a warning left from something ancient, something that had been repeating this cycle long before I ever stepped foot in the factory that I swallowed, trying to convince myself I imagined it, that maybe stress, sleep deprivation, or plain fear had made me hallucinate. But that lie didn't last long, because when I turned to leave, I saw that the locker next to mine, #553, was slightly ajar. I hadn't noticed it earlier. Nobody was supposed to use it anymore. According to the new employee guide, that locker belonged to a worker who'd gone missing during an overtime shift 6 months ago, a man named Jared Kay. They never found his body, just a security tape showing him walking into the North Production Hall at 3:03 a.m. He never came out. I told myself not to look, that it wasn't my problem. But my hand reached out anyway. Did I open the locker? Inside was a neatly folded uniform, pressed and clean like it had just come from dry cleaning. It looked freshly laundered, even though the locker was thick with dust. But that's not what made my blood chill. .it was the time card pinned to the inside of the door. .it had punch-in times and punch-out times, except the punch-out was blank and next to each punch-in was a different name, different handwriting. Dozens of them, and every last one had been crossed out in thick red ink, except mine. Employee number 612, Harlan J. I took a step back. The air in the locker room shifted, grew denser. The light above me flickered, but not from a bulb going bad. It flickered like something had passed in front of it. Something tall. That I slammed the locker shut. .it echoed louder than it should have, the metallic clang ringing like a bell in a cave. Then, from somewhere down the hallway, I heard footsteps. Steady, deliberate, not fast, but impossibly heavy, like each one was being made by boots filled with cement. That I bolted from the locker room and made a beeline to the main floor. That I had a task list to follow. That's what I told myself. Follow the protocol. Obey the list. Don't deviate. Don't ask questions. Complete the shift, submit the form, go home. That's how you survive. The production floor was worse at night. .it wasn't just empty, it was predatory. Machines stood still but hummed like they were breathing. Conveyor belts creaked, though no weight moved on them. The clock over the supervisor's office read 2:24 a.m. I pulled out the clipboard again. Overtime protocol, task sheet, shift 2, recalibrate all red indicator sensors in sector B. Replace depleted lubricants in track 4, CMSDS. Confirm disposal of all defective product. Review bin 9. Record any anomalies in the night log. Sector B was at the far end of the factory, where the lights rarely worked right. I passed through Sector A with no issue, even though the ceiling fan over Station 13 kept spinning despite no power feed. When I reached Sector B, the temperature dropped. I saw my breath in the air. The sensors were small red orbs, one mounted on each machine. I checked the first one. The needle on the dial was at 6. Normal range. I tapped the reset button. .it buzzed and clicked into place. The second sensor was cracked. A jagged fracture ran through the lens like it had been hit with something. I noted it and kept going, but the third machine, the sensor wasn't RED. .it pulsed blue. I froze. That wasn't in any manual I'd read. I hadn't even known the sensors could turn blue. I looked down at the reset button. It was missing. Just a hole in the panel where it used to be. Something inside the machine shifted. Not mechanically, organically. The metal groaned. I stepped back from behind me. A voice whispered, "You're not Jared." I spun around. .01. Just rows of machines, silent and watching. I finished the sector as quickly as possible. The last few sensors were red, normal. I left. The pulsing blue one untouched. I didn't log it. I didn't want it to know I had seen it. Task 2, track 4. Replacing the lubricants. I made my way to the maintenance room, keycard in, and found the sealed containers of factory-grade lubricant. One was already open, a trail of viscous, black, liquid smeared along the floor. I followed it to track 4. .it was worse than I expected. The lubricant tank had ruptured. That wasn't supposed to happen. It was reinforced with metal casing. But this one looked like it had burst outward. Like something had clawed its way out. More black sludge dripped from the ceiling. It wasn't like oil. It smelled wrong. Like rotting sugar and burnt hair. I started pouring from the new container. The moment the fluid hit the reservoir, lights in the entire sector dimmed. A low, metallic growl echoed through the ductwork above me. and then I saw them, handprints, dozens of them, in the black grease, smearing across the walls, across the floor, and up the support beams. Some were human, some were not. That I got out of there fast. The last task, bin 9. Defective products were sorted into bins and carted away during the day shift. At night, our job was to double-check that the disposal tags were accurate, that nothing with a recalled defect ended up in shipment. Bin 9 was sealed, but the seal had been broken. The security strip that marked the bin as processed had been peeled back, and new tape, older, dirtier, had been applied over it. That I opened it slowly. Inside were mannequins, but not factory mannequins. These weren't production samples. These looked too real, too human. Pale silicone skin, glass eyes, rooted hair. Each wore a name tag. Each had a factory badge, and each one matched a name from the time card I'd seen in Locker 553. They weren't mannequins. They were replicas. Of employees, and the last one in the bin had my face. I ran. Didn't clock out. Didn't finish the log. Just ran. But when I reached the front gate, it was open, and standing there, on the other side of the chain link fence, was someone in a factory uniform, same as mine, holding a clipboard. But I couldn't see their face. The shadows bent around it like smoke. They pointed back at the building. The time card station. The locker. I turn around. The factory was glowing now. A low, pulsing blue from every window, every machine, every crack. I looked down at my hand. A red line had been drawn across my wrist. Clock out before 3:00. That's what the protocol says, and it was 2:58. I never believed in ghosts, curses, or haunted places, at least not until that night. After surviving the first 2 shifts at Bell Ridge Industrial, I should have run. Should have taken the warning signs, the distorted faces in the break room mirror, the ringing bell that never existed, and the supervisor's hollow stare as the cosmic hint to get the hell out. But desperation is an iron collar, and mine was. Locked tight. I needed the overtime. No ID check. No taxes. Just hard labor, night hours, and cash under the table. And now, a new note had been slipped under my locker door. Night 3 protocol. Obey the siren. If it sounds 3 times, hide immediately. Do not let it see you. Failure to comply results in reassignment. No name. No date. Just the protocol. That word again. Reassignment. I had a creeping feeling I didn't want to know what that meant. I arrived early. The security booth was abandoned, as usual. The floodlights buzzed but stayed dark. I signed myself in, because no one ever did it for me. Then I walked the cracked concrete toward the looming building. The third night's air felt different, less heavy, but colder, as if the factory had exhaled everything foul during the second shift, and now waited, hollow and empty, ready to draw in again. Inside, the walls were darker, not just shadowed, but stained, as if something had wept through the paint. The overhead. Lights clicked on slowly, one at a time, casting flickering yellow glows down the hall. I noticed immediately that every clock was missing. All of them. Torn from the walls. A single paper lay taped to the time clock. Tonight's tasks: replace all clock units with the box digital timers in storage 3. Verify all output dials on the kill line are set to neutral. Sweep section B4. Remains. Use disposal unit if necessary. Remains. I pretended they meant debris, trash, scraps, not whatever else that word might imply. Storage 3 sat deep in the warehouse wing, somewhere I hadn't been before. The factory was a maze of metal, grates, cold corridors, and towering machinery that creaked even when idle. I passed through long rows of conveyor belts until I reached the rusted doors marked S3. The room was packed, boxes labeled with unreadable symbols, dust coat shelves, and at the center, a stack of 10 small digital timers in thin white boxes. I took them as I left storage 3. The siren wailed. Once. It was the kind of sound that vibrated through your chest. Not a warning siren, not a fire alarm. It sounded alive, like something wounded and mechanical all at once. Then a voice, raspy, hollow, echoed over the loudspeaker. First sound. Acknowledge the watcher. What the hell did that mean? I stood there, frozen, halfway between hallways. Every instinct screamed to move, to run, to hide. Then, the second siren. This one made the lights flicker. And beneath it, footsteps. Heavy, slow, dragging across metal floors. I dropped the timers, backed into a shadowed corner between pipes. Then came the third. Lights died. A shape moved at the end of the corridor, tall. Wrong. Like a man wearing machinery. Its shoulders scraped the ceiling. Tubes slithered from its back like roots. Where its head should have been was a spinning array of red lights, blinking in an unreadable pattern. It stopped, turned, faced the hallway, then it spoke, not aloud, but inside my head. Incomplete protocol. You do not belong. It stepped forward. I held my breath, closed my eyes, waited for it to reach me. But then, a chime. A single, sharp beep from the time clock I hadn't replaced yet. And the thing turned away. It left. When the lights flickered back on, the hallway was empty. I retrieved the timers, hand shaking. Installed them room by room. No clocks remained, only glowing red numbers ticking upward like some reverse countdown. At the kill line, I checked the dials. One was turned to max. I switched it to neutral. Immediately, the conveyor groaned and let out a puff of steam. Something black and tar-like dripped out the back. Finally, I reached Section B. Section B wasn't on any map. The door was unlabeled. Behind it, scorched tiles, broken machinery, and a clean-up crew's worst nightmare. Limbs, charred, half melted into the floor, but no blood. I used the disposal unit. A steel barrel with a pulsing blue light. Everything I swept in disappeared. With a hiss. No trace left. My final task done, I returned to the time clock. The note was gone. In its place, a new one, protocol acknowledged. Reassignment delayed. Return tomorrow. I left through the main doors. They creaked open for me this time. Outside, my car was idling. I never left it on. In the backseat, a box of digital timers waited, and one was ticking. The factory was colder. When I returned. Not physically, maybe, but emotionally. The air had a kind of sterility to it, a detachment from the world outside, as if this place was sealed in some forgotten pocket of time, grinding forward on gears made of silence and dread. I didn't even pretend I had a choice anymore. My rent was overdue, the temp agency wasn't answering my calls, and the only thing I had in my fridge was baking soda and a packet of mustard. I had come back. That made me one of them. The night guard was nowhere in sight. Instead, a new sign greeted me in the break room. It was taped over the bulletin board, right above the old cork board riddled with rusted pins and faded safety slogans. Shift protocol update. Effective immediately. Entry must be logged in the red binder. See policy number 3. Overtime is now mandatory, until otherwise stated. See policy number 9. Supervisor rounds begin at 2:16 a.m. sharp. Avoid eye contact. See policy number 4. I found the red binder sitting on the metal table, its cover warped from moisture and heat. Inside, it contained dozens of short, frantic entries. Still here. Haven't slept in 3 days. They moved the machines again. Door to Sector C is gone. If I'm not back, tell my daughter I tried to leave. I really did. I wrote my name in the next line. As soon as the pen left the paper, the lights flickered. A low hum reverberated through the steel beams. The machines were already awake. I made my way down to the assembly floor. Conveyor belts stretched into the dark like endless tongues, their rollers gleaming like teeth. Above them, giant robotic arms hung limp from the ceiling, still at first, but twitching now and then. Like they were waking from sleep. My task sheet was short tonight. Night 3 tasks: clean out the grinding chute in Section D. Policy number 6. Refill hydraulic fluid tanks in sectors A and B.be present in a designated safe zone at 2:16 a.m. sharp. Policy number 4. Policy number 6 flashed through my mind. Policy number 6. Never place your hand past the second joint into any chute, grinder, or disposal shaft. The machinery remembers flesh. Section D was deeper in the factory, down a corridor I hadn't walked before. As I moved, the overhead lights blinked out one by one behind me, forcing me deeper into the maze. When I reached the chute, it was clogged with a thick, tar-like sludge. The smell was chemical, but also faintly organic, like wet meat left out. Too long. I used a hooked rod to scoop the gunk free, careful not to lean in. Still, something down there moved. Slithered. I yanked the rod back and stumbled away. The chute shuddered and exhaled a puff of steam. No alarms. No punishment. Not yet. I moved on to refill the hydraulic tanks. Each station had a red metal drum and a hose. As I poured the fluid, something scraped across the metal catwalk behind. I turned. Nothing, but when I turned back, one of the drums was gone. Just Vanished, that's when the clock ticked to 2:15 am my heart stuttered. I checked the floor plan in my pocket, crude and hand-drawn, but it showed the safe zones. 6-foot squares marked by yellow tape. There was one just a few steps away. In Sector 8, I ran 2:16 am, the hum stopped. Total silence descended, crushing and heavy. Then came the footsteps, not human ones. These sounded like something impossibly tall and thin, each step clicking like bone against metal that I stayed inside the tape square. I didn't breathe. The supervisor walked past. IT didn't have a face, just a long, black coat with empty sleeves that hung unnaturally straight. Its head was a cage of wires and flickering lights. As it passed, I saw inside that cage that I saw my own face, but it wasn't me. It was me, if I never left. The image stared at me until the supervisor turned and vanished through a side door that hadn't been there before. I almost collapsed. But I wasn't done. I returned to the break room and scrawled my entry in the red. Binder, supervisor saw me. I didn't move. I saw something in its head. It knows I'm still here. The lights stayed on tonight. No warnings. No noises until I reached my locker inside, where my thing should have been, was a new uniform. Same color. Same patches. But this one had a name tag sewn into it already. Supervisor in training *. The factory floor felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. Not just the usual grinding and clanking of machinery. This was something else. A subtle hum, like a pulse. Beneath the steel and concrete, vibrated underfoot. The air was thicker, the shadows deeper. Every metallic surface seemed to gleam with a slickness, as if coated in something wet and breathing. I woke from a restless sleep to find a folded piece of paper on my kitchen table. I didn't remember putting it there. The handwriting was jagged, smeared with something dark. It read simply, "They remember." I shivered and stuffed the note into my pocket. Outside, the sun rose weakly through a sky that looked bruised. I didn't want to go back, but my dwindling bank balance made the decision for me. When I arrived at the factory, the front doors were locked, but the buzzer rang through the silence like a warning shot. 3 presses, wait for silence, routine I'd come to accept. The doors unlocked without hesitation. Inside, the break room was quiet. No signs of the usual night crew. On the bulletin board was a new notice taped hastily over the last one. Shift protocol update, urgent report. Any machine anomalies immediately to supervisor. Do not enter Sector C after 3 am without supervisor clearance. Overtime is mandatory. Failure to comply will result in termination. The red binder was gone. Instead, a tablet sat on the table, displaying a blinking cursor and a prompt, log your entry here. I hesitated but typed, arrived at shift start. No red binder. The tablet beeped and displayed a new message, acknowledged. Begin tasks immediately. My tasks for the night were: inspect conveyor belts for damage, refill lubricant in all hydraulic systems, monitor Sector C for unauthorized activity. I grabbed my flashlight and a handheld tablet from the supply shelf. As I moved through the dim factory floor, my footsteps echoed loudly. The machines loomed like giant beasts at rest. I tried to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. Reaching the conveyor belts, I found the usual oil stains but also strange scratches in the metal rollers, like claw marks. They weren't there yesterday. I ran my fingers over the grooves, feeling a faint warmth. A distant metallic clang made me whip around. Nothing. Sector C was just ahead. The large metal door was sealed shut, but a faint hum leaked from beneath it. I checked the time, 2:59 am. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. My flashlight beam caught something moving. A long, thin shape darting between machines. It vanished before I could focus. I took a shaky breath and remembered policy #6. Policy number 6. Never place your hand past the second joint into any chute, grinder, or disposal shaft. The machinery remembers flesh. I kept my hands close, moving cautiously. I noticed the hydraulic tanks had been tampered with. Seals broken, fluid levels dangerously low. A soft mechanical whirring started behind me. I turned, heart pounding. A robotic arm had started moving on its own, slow and deliberate. It reached out towards a loose panel on the floor. Before I could react, the arm jerked back, as if startled. Then it began a repetitive tapping sound. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps. I frowned and tapped my tablet. No instructions. No warnings. Then the voice came over the PA system, low and distorted, "Do not proceed." I froze. The voice repeated, clearer this time, "Do not proceed." I glanced towards Sector CS door. It vibrated, like something massive was pushing against it from the inside. A sudden cold gust blew through the room, extinguishing my flashlight. In the pitch black, I heard the unmistakable sound of gears grinding, slow and agonizing, coming from all directions. Panicked, I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The beam revealed the floor was crawling with oily footprints, human-sized. But no one was around. Why breathing grew rapid. I remembered the warning about the supervisor rounds beginning at 2:16 a.m. sharp. It was now nearly 3 a.m. The tapping resumed. Louder this time. I backed away, bumping into a stack of crates. The boxes toppled, and behind them was a narrow doorway I hadn't noticed before. It led to a spiral staircase descending into darkness. No warning sign. No mention on the factory map. Against every instinct, I stepped down. The stairs smelled of rust and ROT. The bottom was a small chamber, walls lined with broken machine parts and tangled wires. In the center, a console flickered to life. On its screen was a grainy image, Sector CS interior. Inside, the machines moved violently, as if possessed. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, thin, its body wrapped in rusted metal plates and cables. Its eyes glowed bright red. It turned to face the camera, then slowly lifted a hand. Pointing directly at me. I slammed the console off and ran up the stairs. Back on the factory floor, the lights flickered back on. My tablet buzzed with a new message. You saw. Now you remember. A voice whispered close to my ear. Cold breath. The machines remember. I collapsed against a conveyor belt. My phone buzzed again. A text appeared. Step carefully. Step wrongly, and you become one of them. My eyes darted to the shadows. The factory was no longer a place of work. It was a trap, and I was the bait. The night I almost didn't come back was the night everything changed. The factory, the machines, the cold metal heart of it all. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was a living nightmare, breathing down my neck, waiting for me to make one wrong move. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat. My alarm hadn't gone off. It was already 10:45 p.m. The usual shift started at 11, but there was no way I could be ready. I told myself maybe it was a blessing in disguise, a chance to skip one more round of horrors. But when I looked outside, the sky was ink black, without stars or moonlight. The streetlights flickered weakly, as if they too were afraid to illuminate the path to the factory. I had no choice. I got dressed, grabbed my things, and headed to the door. As I stepped outside, a cold wind hit me. It wasn't natural. It carried the scent of rust and burnt oil, mixed with something metallic and sweet, like blood. The factory loomed ahead, its windows dark and unwelcoming. I pushed the gates open and walked inside. The place was eerily silent. No hum of machinery. No footsteps echoing, only my own breath, heavy and quick. I reached the break room, expecting to find the tablet with my usual tasks. Instead, the room was empty, the walls smeared with something dark and sticky. On the table lay a single sheet of paper. It read, "End of overtime. You no longer belong here. You have seen too much. The supervisor has deemed you a threat. Leave before the next shift, or become one with the machines." My heart pounded in my chest. I crumpled the note and stuffed it in my pocket. The factory was a trap, and I was caught. In the gears, I decided to finish my tasks anyway. Not for the pay, not for the job, but for my own sanity. The conveyor belts still lay dormant, coated in dust. The machines were silent, but I knew that was temporary. I moved towards Sector C, the forbidden area. The door was ajar inside, the air was thick, humid, and the smell was worse than ever, decay mixed with burnt metal. The machines were arranged in a circle, their robotic arms twitching in anticipation. In the center was a platform, stained with rust and dried blood. I felt a presence behind me. Slowly, I turned. The supervisor stood there, its wire cage head glowing dimly. The name tag on its chest read, "Supervisor." Raised a hand, and the machines around us sprang to life, whirring and grinding. I ran, alarms blared, lights flashing red and blue. The factory had become a prison. I darted through corridors that twisted and changed, like the building was reshaping itself. I heard metal scraping behind me, the supervisor and the machines, closing in. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I couldn't stop. Then I stumbled into a room filled with old lockers. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Inside, I found another uniform, identical to the one I'd seen before. A name tag was sewn on, Employee 237. I tore it off and stuffed it in my pocket. The pounding on the door began, metallic claws scraping the surface. The supervisor's voice echoed through the room, "You cannot escape. The factory remembers." Panic surged through me. Did I search the locker for anything to defend myself? My hands closed around a rusted pipe. The door burst open. The supervisor stepped inside. Tall and imposing, I swung the pipe, but it passed through. Like smoke, the machines flooded the room, surrounding me. There was nowhere left to run. The world went black. I woke up in a cold, dark space. The sounds of machinery surrounded me. I looked down and saw my hands, mechanical, welded with wires, and metal. I was no longer human. The factory had claimed me. I was part of the protocol now, and the overtime would never end.